Today, I'm talking to Brett Dickinson with Pacific Sotheby's International Realty. Born in Atlanta, Georgia, raised in Las Vegas, Nevada, visitor of 60 countries, and former resident of 5 countries, Brett transitioned from world champion tennis player to record-breaking residential real estate agent. He holds the highest price sale in La Jolla for $24,700,000 and the record-breaking sale in Bird Rock Waterfront for $20 million. That is $7 million over the former highest sale price of $13 million. Between his track record and talking to Brett, it's clear it didn't happen by luck alone. Brett and I talk about how to break records in your business. Thanks for listening to the Jere Metcalf podcast, where top real estate agents tell how they do it. This podcast was created for real estate agents across the country to come together, sharing ideas to take your, their, and our business to the next level. All right, everybody, it's the Jere Metcalf podcast where top real estate agents tell how they do it. And we have Brett Dickinson with us in La Jolla with Sotheby's International Realty. And you're the Pacific Sotheby's office, right?
That's correct, yes.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on. So everybody, just to give you a little bit about Brett, he has broken a few records in La Jolla, including the highest sales price in history in La Jolla. And by the way, another record-breaking sale by $7 million, a $20 million property that was on the Bird Rock coast.
Bird Rock Waterfront. Yeah, we actually coined that. We actually coined that neighborhood in order to create the value. It's a very fascinating story.
Wow. So a little bit about Brett. This guy, like, not only has he done that, I can't wait for y'all to learn more. He was a former professional tennis player. But just giving everybody that much of a clue, tell us, Brett, like, how did you get into this business? Give us your big life story summary.
Sure. Well, ironically, I was born in Atlanta, Georgia, which is funny, but I only lived there a couple of years, so I really didn't pick up much of an accent.
So where'd you grow up?
So I grew up in Las Vegas. So I actually grew up.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, with the Agassiz. They were pretty good tennis players. And then, David Pate was another guy that I played with. He was number 1 in the world in doubles and went on, was top 20 in singles. And so we had a group of kids, which we all, became pretty good tennis players. I was top 10 in the country. So I went out to California, to La Jolla, to play tennis. I worked with Pancho Segura, who was coaching Jimmy Connors at the time. And I was living in La Jolla, and my family came out to visit, and I ultimately went off and played professional tennis. I lived, in Europe for 12 years. I lived in Paris, picked up French, been to 60 countries, lived in 5, played in all the slams. I mean, I had amazing life experience playing, Andre Agassi and Courier, and it was an incredible experience. And in the interim, my sister married someone from La Jolla and said, hey, when you finish your career, why don't you come back here and we'll have a junior tennis program together in beautiful San Diego. And I'm like, why not? It's the best world to live. And I loved it. So we came back and we had a junior program with like 100 kids. And my body started to hurt. I had played 140 matches for a year for 15 years. And that's a lot of matches, plus travel, training. And then I played national 35s and 40s and won 9 national titles and world championship twice. And so I just thought, get into another business.
Everybody, Brett bypasses that. I just want to pause. He was, as a kid, this is relevant to this interview because it's all about competition and winning and who you are and overcoming challenges and rising above. As a kid, you're top 10 in the country player.
Sure.
Fast forward professionally, you're playing 140 matches for 15 a year for 15.
140 matches a year. So that's a match almost every 3 days, but that didn't include travel, training, injuries.
Right.
So it's probably every other day you're playing.
That's intense. And then you were the top 150 in the world was, or
Yeah, I was around there and top 100 in doubles. And then I played the 35s and 40s when I got older, and I won 9 national titles.
9, that was it, 9 national titles. Okay,
Yeah.
just like that's like I love how you roll through it. Like, okay, everybody, just remember this is who we're talking about, because I think it's relevant to you're successful at tennis, and now you in real estate, and you're doing the same stuff in real estate. So keep going.
Yeah. So, when I got into real estate, I was thinking, what are my life skills when I was trying to pick a new profession? And I volunteered, at a hedge fund. A friend of mine was running a hedge fund, and I'm like, I just can't sit in front of that computer all day. I want to interact with people. I like the competitive aspect of, getting deals and putting deals together. And I like building things like relationships, businesses. I don't necessarily love building homes, but I like the building of the business. And when I coached kids, I liked, helping the kid, put his game together, put his life together. I had 100 kids, so I had like 50 kids that went off to college and played tennis in college and things like that. So I was thinking, this could be a really good field for me. Plus, I had a great network of people. So, during that time, I went back to college, went back and studied, economics and accounting and writing, because one of the things I really found in real estate is if you can't articulate the deal, if you can't write an argumentative positional email, it's very hard to convince people of things. And so being a teacher helped me a lot because I could break things down and discuss them. But then when I got into real estate, what I found was a lot of people, their goal was to just get a listing, put it on the market, and sell it.
Yeah.
But when you're doing luxury, you have a lot of clients that have really high expectations, very often unrealistic expectations. And what you're trying to do is, instead of me getting the listing, having it for a year or two, dealing with the client, trying to get price reductions, trying to get the property sold, and then watching them lower the price and list it with another agent, I go, this can't be the way to do it. There's got to be a better way to do this. So I started studying other markets. I started studying what happened in Manhattan Beach, what happened in San Francisco, what happened in Hong Kong. Why did prices rise so much in a particular area? Within those areas, why did those micro areas go up? And what I found is people buy neighborhoods. And when you have a local person that's living, let's say in La Jolla, and they're looking at a waterfront that they could have gotten, 30 years ago for $2 million, how do you're not going to get that same person to pay 20 for the same property. They're not.
Exactly.
So what you need to have somebody coming from outside your area,
Yep.
that looks at your area and thinks, hey, this isn't that expensive at 20. And wow, I'm buying the La Jolla Shores, or I'm buying Bird Rock Waterfront. So when I took the listing on the Bird Rock Waterfront, which is 311 Sea Ridge, which you see in the picture behind me.
Yes, by the way, yeah.
There had never been a sale above 12 million on the waterfront, and it was anemic. There'd been one or two, and that was really kind of a $3 million neighborhood, just 2-3 years ago as you went inland. So the challenge was to take that coastline and explain it, tell the story. So we created an Instagram, Bird Rock Waterfront. We created a website. We went on Facebook. We met with the local community. And what they have is they have what's called a Metropolitan Administrative District, where they were investing money and improving their little town there in Bird Rock. And if the coast you see behind me, that's what's called the Cabrillo Formation. The Cabrillo Formation is 70 million years old. So we did a big historical study.
Oh, wow.
30 million years old. And during the Second World War, the government the military put bunkers there, and that's where the guns were because the cliffs were so hard and so solid. So when we had a buyer come to talk to us about the property, we explained what was going on there, why this was the most amazing area to live. We named it the New Street of Dreams because we have a Street of Dreams called on Camino de la Costa, which is further up the hill that gets, $15-20 million. I mean, it's literally 5 minutes away.
Yeah.
So what we did was we created this whole story. And, you know, if you follow coastal sales, there is a bleed into the next coastal area, and properties along this street that would sell for $5 million, like a fixer upper on the water, what that same house literally a half a mile north on the same coast would sell for 10 or 15. Same house, same lot, same, but nobody wanted to live in this Bird Rock area because it hadn't really garnered these bigger numbers. And the good news is we had a company called Blue Heron, which is an incredible contemporary builder out of Las Vegas, and a guy named Tyler Jones and his partner David Lesnick, and they were like, okay, we're going to build 2 or 3 of these gorgeous properties. And they interviewed everybody in town, and they hired us to brand and market their property. But what I said is, I said, before we ever go to market, for 6 or 8 months, we started branding the neighborhood. Because people, I mean, think about your market. What would be the most expensive area in Atlanta where
Right.
people want to buy because it's the neighborhood, the schools? I mean, where would that be for you?
Right. Well, because Atlanta listeners are listening, I hope there are any hard feelings because there are a lot of them, but probably Tuxedo Park or Oregon Forest, but really Tuxedo
Right.
Park. Right.
And people just know that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And like you just know, and historic Brookhaven, all of my historic Brookhaven client listeners. But anyway, but yeah, really it's Tuxedo Park. So, right.
Right. And in order to establish a new neighborhood, you'd have to have a whole new, like either new style of homes or a new story or something happen. So rather than wait for it to
Oh,
happen,
yeah.
we decided to be proactive and make it. And we call it, we make the market. And so if you look at my tennis career, I have a saying in my team. I said, if you're not getting better, we're falling behind. So
Oh,
thinking of what's coming up, we're falling behind because when you're in a competitive tennis world and
I'm
you're
writing this one down. Usually I like abbreviate, but I don't want to forget this. If you're not getting better, you're falling behind.
right, because somebody else is getting better,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, absolutely.
So I am very much into my team and my team members. We call it work on your game. You need to be reading books. You need to be studying. Like this year, for example, I read a book on pricing strategies. What are the different pricing strategies? And here's something really interesting we did. So there's a book called Predictably Irrational.
Ooh.
And it's why people buy, and it's human social economics. I've started reading this book, and one of the things is there's a guy that runs around the country, and he gives advice to restaurant owners on how to price things on their menu. Does is he goes and he sets a steak. Many of you, I love steaks, love to go to steakhouses, and you see $180 steak. And nobody buys the $180 steak, but his next steak is $95, which is still $20 or $30 more than what you really wanted to pay.
Right.
Buy it because it's less than the most expensive one, and it's the most profitable item for the restaurant.
Oh.
They price things in order to make the most money. Very few people will buy the $180 steak, but they need the $180 steak to sell the $90 steak. Well, what we did was we have 2 of these properties, and we set the other property, which is 8,500 square feet, at 28 million. And we set this one at 22 million, so that when we showed both properties, they thought this one was a deal. This property was $7 or $8 million more than anything that sold in the area. So when we showed the property the first 20 times, most of the people were saying they wanted to pay 17 or $18 million for the home,
Which is still up there.
5 million more than anything that had ever. We already had people. All we were trying to do was get an extra couple $1 million, which is an extra 10% for the house.
Yeah.
And COVID helped us do that, and interest rates helped us do that. So you see what I mean?
Right. So what happened to the $28 million house?
Well, it isn't completed yet. So
and you're set up for success, by the way.
Yeah. So we have this sale in the area. And now what we're doing is there was one other property that wasn't my house that sold for $19,250,000. So now we have 2 houses in the area that have sold, and now we have a market. So what we're going to do is we price the other one at 25 until it's built.
Yeah.
And when it's finished, we're going to price it at 26, and it's larger than this house and nicer than the other house. So we figure we can get that high number based on also what happened in La Jolla Shores, which is the highest price sale at 24,700,000. You see what I mean? So
Yeah.
what's happening is real estate agents aren't thinking about how to control their destiny. They're thinking about how to sell a home, but they're not thinking about how people behave.
Yeah. Well,
So we're trying to change the game. And to get to the tennis, just one more thing is
yeah.
playing a player, if I can understand the way they think and what they're going to do, I can beat that player. Because then I know what they're thinking. I know where the ball's going. I know what's going to happen, and I know what shots I have to play. Roger Federer said that when he went into the tennis tour, he watched all the best players in the world. And he sat with his coach and he said, look, I want you to tell me what shots I need to develop to be the best player in the world and how I have to sequence them. And that's how I'm going to play the game.
Of course.
And so
Wow.
that is the thing about selling these homes. I was on a call the other day and they were saying that, it's pricing, and it's like price it to sell. And I'm like, well, that's not how you create value in a neighborhood. You don't create value in a neighborhood by selling to comp. The comp is the appraisal. It's not, that's a number.
Value by creating opportunity. And when you create opportunity in selling, there's like the book Pitch Anything, and he's not the only guy who knows, it's framing. The value does need to be there, but it's all about creating it and getting it there. It's like you said, you're looking at property values have gone up over and over again anyway. How did it happen? And positioning yourself and your client in the property to just understand how it happens and implement it, just like a sport.
Yes.
You're on the tennis court with your tennis racket and like swing at it until you hit the ball. That's not how it happens, right? It shouldn't be.
Well, at first, you're just trying to hit it, but then you're actually trying to play the game and trying to figure out how to put the sequence together, how to put the whole kind of tapestry of a match together. And so that's what led me to this whole way of thinking for neighborhoods. And we've now used the same strategy all throughout La Jolla, where like La Jolla Heights, we sold a property for $8 million. It's $4 million than anything that's ever sold in the area. We've done it up on the hillside, Soledad Mountain. And now we're targeting a new neighborhood. And it's just very interesting.
Watch out, buyers. Here he comes.
Interesting and exciting than just selling a house. I love it.
I love what you're saying, because I find it was the reason why I initially did not love being a real estate agent, is I was like, this is just like, go until you're lucky. Go until you're lucky. Like what? Is it like can't, like you said, it can't be all that. Why do you think, or am I just wrong, that is so much not just the perception, it's more the perception from inside our industry sometimes, or way too often, that it is outside. How did that happen and why?
Exactly. And that's what, a lot of these seminars, like I went to a seminar, and I'm not going to name the name of it, very well-known company. And I spoke to the guy after the seminar and I said, are you aware that we spent 3 days and you did not do one breakout on how to sell a house?
Thank you.
Like, duh. Why? And we're talking about, Agents Productions, and they did this cool video and then it went viral and it's them doing a rap song. I mean, I'll be honest with you, like, who cares? I mean, what you really want to do, people are really, like, we did a video for the property behind me with the architect, and he went through what his vision was, what he was thinking about the property, why he built it, why he sited it, what makes it different. We got 85,000 hits on that video on YouTube. People really want content. They want valuable content. People are smarter than just being, it's neat, to see something on Instagram and this and that, but that's not your buyer. That's not the buyer for properties.
Exactly.
And it's cool.
Yeah. Well, to your point, you can get 1,000 people looking at you, or millions of people looking at you, quoting Seth Godin. It's having the people who are going to pay the most money, is in luxury. positioned to what appeals to them. What do they pay for? What are they looking, creating, not just positioning, but you've actually got to create and understand what they're looking for and make sure they know about it, the right people.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I love the fact that real estate's entertaining. I mean, one thing is
Oh, heck yeah.
when I taught tennis and I'd go to a dinner or an event, there were only a certain percentage of people that played tennis. But now that I sell real estate, love real estate. I love real estate. I mean,
Yeah.
I love, getting a good deal for my buyer. Don't get me wrong, it's not all about just pushing the prices up. I love to get, I used to do $200,000 and $300,000 short sales and foreclosures, and I'd write 5 to 10 offers a day for clients trying to get deals for them
Yeah.
in 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12. But now that I'm on the other side, I've got to take the other position on how to create value. So, we do about 50-50 buyers and sellers, but, we find amazing deals for buyers. But I think there's a real fascinating story to how to sell luxury homes or homes in general. And pricing is a big part of it. And I think we're missing the mark if we just say, hey, look at the comp, put it on the market. Otherwise,
I couldn't agree with you more.
value. How do you price a property in an uptrending market if you look at the comp? You
I
can't.
could not agree with you more. I mean,
Yeah.
it takes time, I think, in this industry and learning it. It can have been in this. How long have you been an agent?
So I've been an agent about 12 years.
So I've been one.
I've been a
I
full-time
don't
agent.
know what to say anymore. No, what were you gonna say? Like 17 or 18 years. But anyway.
Right. But it's also your life experience. So I've run 4 businesses, and I hire an agent. Like I have an agent on my team, Stephanie Zawalski, and she used to be at Countrywide. She had 30 people under her. And
Wow.
she's like 32 years of age, but she's like the most amazing agent because she's run other business. Or my other agent, Annette Villalobos, she used to do sales. Her father owned a produce company and used to do import export. So when I find people that have other experiences in other businesses, it's extremely valuable. And I will say that my entire team is all women.
Wait, what's that? What'd you say?
I have all women on my team.
We are smarter. Just saying.
I'm not even going to comment on that.
And I will comment on this, even though it's political, but there are no hashtag Me Too's around here. We don't need them. We just are fabulous.
They kick.
They're just fabulous as women.
I'm not,
So, but going like, there we go. Anyway, but going into this business, that really on the value, it took me a long time because there's a consensus in our industry is price, price, price. And I remember a few times I kind of just started discovering like people are saying it's price, but this is not price. This is positioning and buyer and understanding, and maybe reading a little bit of Seth Godin helps me with that. And then it works. And then you're like, wait, like, and often nobody knows. Do other agents know? No. Do appraisers know? Heck no. Who knows? The buyer, what the buyers pay for, like you said, looking at history and what they pay for.
Well, the other thing that's interesting, and I don't know what is your feeder market. So our feeder market right now is San Francisco and Los Angeles because
that's a lot of ours. Yeah.
Really expensive, and the quality of life is actually, it's nice, but it's not anything like San Diego life.
Exactly what I hear about San Diego.
We just saw statistics yesterday that our property values are literally 25 to 35% less expensive on average than those markets. So when that buyer comes here, they're getting so much more for their money. So they'll pay, let's say 20% less than what they would have paid, but 10% more than what we're used to. So they're okay with that. So that's driving our price up. And they'll come in with full price offers, which we don't usually see that much, but in their market, if they're not over asked, they can't get a deal. So we can get, depending on the buyer. So do you have that phenomenon in Atlanta? Where would be your feeder market?
Well, to your point, our feeder markets are New York, not New York, not me so much, but I know a lot of New York's coming here, Chicago, DC, San Francisco, LA. In those markets, San Francisco always comes to mind first, because I can think of stories I can tell you where we've had properties and the buyer comes in and assumes when they're from San Francisco, there are multiple offers. And then the deal gets done. We had this was actually today, we had an offer on a property we've got interest, and my client says to me, so like, how do we get into like a bidding war situation? I said, well, here's the deal. When you're in San Francisco, or you've got, it depends on where your buyers from, if you even want that. Because in Atlanta, if you have a bidding war situation and they're not coming from another market where they're used to that, it's culture, mindset, whatever, they run, or they bid up and then they run, and then you're in really bad place. So you go, okay, who are our buyers? What are the dynamics? What's the situation? And that's how we're going to play this. And if we have a buyer from San Francisco, they're not going to be so afraid, or they're just going to do what they need to do. And in this market, you position it to get them to do what they need to do. Creating a bidding war, there's so much buyer's remorse in our market for the most part, at least at this very time, because it's always changing, because the dynamics of our market are changing so fast.
Right. Well, so that's also what I love about real estate is it's constantly changing. And I think the whole interesting thing is to try to kind of tell where it's heading and what's happening with people. But our very high end, interestingly enough, when we ended up in escrow on this 311 Sea Ridge, we had 27 showings. This is the strangest phenomenon, which I don't understand in real estate yet. We had 27 showings in a year or 9 months, no offers. And then in a 24-hour period, we received 3 offers, 2 of them by email that I had shown the property to them a month prior. So go figure. So you get 1 offer. I didn't even contact these people.
It's like working in a retail store, you know.
I got the offer.
How they come.
Yeah. And that, yeah, it's so strange how often that happens. There must be something that's causing that, which I have not been able to figure out.
Now we're going to go into like the book on quantum physics and whatnot. I mean,
yeah, exactly. Yes.
I don't know, because it's like literally when you're working.
It happens all the time.
Right. I worked in retail for a very short period. It was not for me. I stood at the window and stare at my car and think about driving off and leaving. This is right out of college. But I can remember like when people came, they were in and then they were out.
Yeah, it's weird. So anyway, listen to what happens. We get the 3 offers.
Okay.
And we decide not to multiple counter, because at that level, if you multiple counter, you'll lose all 3, because they're people that are in that type of buying situation, because we're not a hot market. Like at that price point, we're a hot market, let's say under
fire. Yeah.
It's a different world. So it's a different price point. So we decided only to counter 1 person, and we put the deal together. But the guy that put the offer in originally, he was so mad at me because he thought he had an agent. He thought that I shopped him. My job is to shop him.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I'm going to get the highest number, and his offer was pretty low. But then he went over and bought another property at 24/7. And the reason he bought that property was because he lost this one. And when he went to the other one, we said, look, if you're not in the 20s, you're not in the game. We're not even going to counter you. And we're like, 20 million, you know, like,
right.
But at the end of the day, it's the same phenomenon as you're having it. Whatever the price point is, the phenomenon's the same.
Yeah.
Is my point.
Well, and another to your point, which is going to lead, I want to ask you another question about your past life and your current life.
By the way, how do you like my coffee cup?
I love it. Mine's a lot more like serious and.
Oh gosh, you're Sotheby's all the way, huh?
Yeah. Well, usually I have like a pink cup, but I had enough pink on today.
Here, I've got the other side too.
Bugs Bunny, love it. Is there anything we should know about Bugs Bunny before I ask?
No, I actually love Snoopy. Snoopy's my favorite. Snoopy.
Why Snoopy?
House and.
What do you love about? What is it about Snoopy?
Well, my mom we used to watch Peanuts as a kid, and we just got a new dog who's a gorgeous Labradoodle. His name is S'more. I actually got engaged this year.
That has nothing to do with why you love Snoopy.
Yeah.
There's not a reason.
The reason I say that is because we got a dog together, which we love. And so my fiance Jen and I love the dog, and we love Snoopy. And I don't know, my
got engaged to.
Snoopy. I don't know. Love it.
I like Pooh Bear for the Dow. The Pooh is, but there's no. It's just Snoopy's just cute.
Yeah.
Or Charlie Brown.
I got the Christmas Snoopy. I got the Valentine's Day Snoopy. I got them all.
Snoopy's like Charlie Brown. Get over yourself. Just be. Come on. It's just not.
Yeah. Remember when he was the flying ace? I mean, come on.
don't even remember. I just remember like I was so sad for Charlie Brown. I couldn't even watch it as a kid. Like this dude is so
Oh.
sad. It's like why? Like I can't even. But Snoopy, Charlie Brown.
Snoopy's great.
So to your point, and then I'm going to ask you a question on the values and negotiating and positioning and pricing from market to market and situation to situation. It's like playing sports and playing different competitors.
Sure.
It's the same thing in real estate, which you've applied.
Well, no question about it.
Well, add something to that if you want, and then I'm dying to ask you another question.
So the thing about it is, when you're playing a professional or individual sport, you're actually kind of playing a long game. And what happens in real estate is you have a lot of these deals you work on, and when you're working on your game, like tennis game, or your golf game, or you're a running back or quarterback, you don't look at how well you're going to do next week. You're looking at, hey, if I work on these things over time, this is where I want to get to in 2 years. So when we set our goal, we set a yearly goal, but then we have, like when I got into the business, we had a 10-year business plan, and we're about 6 years, 7 years into it. And then we update it a little bit each year, and we keep tweaking it. And it's interesting because there's a lot of little things that make a big difference. Like when I first got into the business, I'm trying to do short sales, and I had a client that wanted to buy, 15 condos. He's like, "Oh, do you know how to do short sales?" I go, "Yeah, it's my specialty." I knew nothing about.
Oh, yeah, knew it.
Yeah,
exactly. That's the competitor right there.
I'm like, oh my God, I've got $5 million to invest for this person. It's like the biggest deal in my life. And I'm like, gotta buy. So I'm reading, I'm working, and I'm just spending all my time trying to become the expert on that. And so I became like really good at the buy side. And then I got good at the sell side. Then I had to go into luxury, and I was competing with all these great agents. So I couldn't get a listing at, over $1 million, $2 million. So, I went and I said, okay, the only way I'm going to be able to beat these agents is if I know what they're doing. So I had a friend of mine that was selling their house, and I had them interview the top 4 agents in La Jolla and get their listing package. So we got their listing package. I laid it all out on the table, and I said, I've got to come up with something that will beat that. That's when I joined Sotheby's, and I came up with a listing presentation that was far superior to theirs. And then I went from getting 2 listings out of 10 to getting 8 out of 10.
Wow.
So my point is, it's no different than my going to the tournament and looking at my competition and saying, okay, oh my God, that guy never misses the ball. Oh my God, he's so fast. Well, how am I going to beat that guy? And figuring out who I have to beat, and then go home and work on my game, and then take that game to the tournament.
So back to Snoopy.
Sure.
Don't be like Charlie Brown. Don't watch the competitors and go, oh, no, that would be Charlie Brown. You're like,
yeah,
oh,
that's not my game.
I think that's why you love Snoopy.
I like Snoopy because he's like the hero.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. You just mentioned in there, and I still haven't, you kind of answered my question, but before, for those of us really listening to what you're saying, you said 2 things that are intriguing. One, your 10-year plan. You wrote a 10-year plan. Like some people's 10-year plan is like you write, it could have been like chicken scratch. It could have been this intricate 1,000-page book with 20 volumes. What was that? How did you know? And how's that looking?
So it's interesting. So, I honestly hadn't really written a business plan. I always had a plan, like kind of held it in my head when I did the tennis, or, went back to college, or, coached, or whatever I did. I always had kind of a longer term plan. And that's what keeps you from losing your mind when you're in this, there's just so many people don't realize how emotionally difficult this business is. It's very challenging to work really hard on a deal, and it falls apart, and then the client lists with somebody else, and you get 0, and you've invested a lot, not just your money, but you've invested a lot of your mental energy. You really like the people, you're trying to do right by them.
Yeah.
And you end up with 0. People don't understand how hard that is when you're going through it. They just look at, oh, you do these deals and you get lots of commission. It doesn't work that way. You know that.
And I have no idea what we're spending.
Yes, to
blood,
attain that
sweat,
goal.
tears. just everything. People just don't know, but it would like, just like tennis, like, is it not the most character building? That's for sure.
You really have to be strong, because you've also got to be, you're in a situation where your ethics, your integrity, I mean, that's on the line all the time in this business. But if you're strong in that regard, you will take share, because that is a big part of your character and what you're doing. I mean, I'll disclose, on this property you're looking at right there, I spent $60,000 marketing that property before we sold it.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of money on one house. Think about it. We carry 20 to 25 listings.
Yeah.
So we're not spending that on every listing, but that particular property, is a lot of money. So my point is, so when we did a plan, it was a 35-page written plan. My business partner, Jen, who is also my fiance, she, is a Wharton graduate, and she's got her, MBA from Haas. And she was like, look, if we're going to do this, you got to have a business plan written. We had
So
a mission.
that's for the bit, which, by the way, you just got engaged this year?
Yeah, we've been together 11 years and we got engaged.
Oh, wow. Well, it's about time.
I knew you were going to give me some crap on that, but that's okay. It's fine.
She and I can just talk about that later.
Yes.
This 10-year business plan. So
Sure.
how, like, what is in it? How did you know how to make it? How intricate is it? Did you do it alone? Did you do it with a team? Obviously you did it with, is it Jen?
With Jen. Well, Jen and I really formulated it together. But we like to set, so a lot of people like to set like super high goals. I like to set a goal and surpass it. That's just my thing.
I like that.
I like to go, like if I go work with a trainer, which, I have a trainer right now, but it's hard for me to work with trainers because I just get so aggravated with them. Because of course I know everything, right? So
Okay, I was like, why? Well,
I'm impossible. But now I have a trainer that
right.
I actually listen to. But if he says, hey, you got to do 3 sets of 10, I'm doing 3 sets of 12.
Wow.
If he, you got to run a mile, I'm running a mile and a quarter. It's just, if I got to hit 100 serves, I'm hitting 110 or 15 serves. It's just, I just feel better when I do just a little bit more. And that's actually what I look for in team members. When I look for a team member, I purposely give them assignments, and I'm looking for them to expectation. That's when I know I have the right team member. Somebody that does a little better work than I thought they could do.
Yeah.
And I like that personality. The person that does 90% of what you ask them, that's what they're going to do consistently.
Interesting.
It's just, and it's and that can change. I mean, I didn't always do a couple extra. I always did, what I was asked. And then I realized, you know what? I'm going to get a lot better.
A little bit more goes a long way.
Yeah. And so
like
when I
do 90%, then it's like, you may as well do none. You do 100%, okay, you did it. But if you do 100, even 2%, you could get another 100% return.
Yeah, and you feel like, hey, I did a little bit more than I was asked. So when I'm given, I don't know, I'm not saying it's the right thing. It's just the way I function.
It might be.
Yeah, when I do my goals each year, like, for example, I set a lot of different types of goals. So I'll set like, okay, my ultimate goal was to do 100 million in sales, and we did 120 million last year. So we surpassed that goal.
You were 4 years early.
Yeah, so we are. We're early. But what I will say is that we also wanted to increase our sphere of influence by 20% per year for 5 years. We wanted to.
How do you increase your sphere of influence and still stay just as connected? Like, what does that look like? Because there's so you and go deep and get referrals, or you can't give everybody everything. You can't be everything to everybody.
Yeah. So just curious, like if I ask randomly, like, what's the number of your sphere of influence, just for you personally, if you don't mind me asking?
Me? Well, define that, because is it my?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So,
right.
For me, most people, when you do all these studies, and I'll just talk openly, kind of in average, they say sphere of influence is like 125 people. But in real estate, most people, it's 250. It's about 200.
But I think your 250 people get a little thinner in depth, maybe. And then you get a few people that are just like,
Yeah,
it's like
100%.
Tyler Perry's Let 'Em Go. Y'all need to watch the YouTube video. You got people like compare people to trees. Some are like leaves, the wind blows and they're gone, and others are like roots, and then there's the branches.
Sure.
We'll talk, right? But
So I think like when I started out, I mean, my sphere of influence was like 75 people. So
Mhm.
when you're 75 people, I mean, you're only adding, 15, 20 people a year. You can do 150 to 200 kind of sphere of influence in real estate. And it just depends on, how you think of it. But then you also have you've got your other sphere, which is all your Sotheby's network, like people like you. So that I don't,
Right. Which
my
people
sphere of influence,
forget.
I go, that's
Yeah.
like we did 41 deals last year, and we had 8 referrals from Sotheby's agents throughout the United States. So
Wow.
that's good. And
So you
that's
did
from all
41
our
deals and
travels that we did.
120 million.
What's that?
We did, just for the record, we did 70. We did not do 100 something million. But that's
Sure.
the difference in market and price point, right?
Oh, well, how many deals did you do?
69.
Yeah, you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So my point is that, I mean, you're crushing it. I mean, that's an
Right.
incredibly great year. So here's what I would also say that's interesting. Someone that does 60 or 70 deals, you've got to be really well organized and have
Yeah, you do.
a fun business where,
Right.
I was averaging 15 or 20 deals a year for a while and doing, let's say, 50, 60 million in sales. So our price point is so different.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so it doesn't mean like we did a $250,000, several $250,000 condos. We do every deal and because Sotheby's is an experience. It's luxury is an experience. It's not a price point. So I do all the deals. It's just that deals like this get a lot more press. You know what I mean?
So which gets you a lot more business, but we are going
Yeah.
to get, so I've got 3 questions I'm getting out of you, and this is not the final 3 either.
Okay.
I did this 10-year business plan. So like my 10-year business plan is like, we're going to do this many million, we're going to have this many people, they're going to have this job, and we're going to hire them at this stage. And it's very like black and white, clear,
Sure.
no pretty paragraphs, no fancy graphs and charts, except how much time I might allocate and what people do stuff. But it's just like clean and clear. Is your
Right.
business plan that, or is it like some intricate marketing
So
strategy?
my business plan,
Something you would do for like your MBA?
yeah, my business plan is very much about. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last thing about
So is
the.
it something you would like do to get your MBA? Mine is not.
No.
Mine
So
would be more like an
mine.
accounting book.
Hang on a second, Jay.
I love it. Get out of here. We got more important
Yeah.
things to talk about.
Yeah. So that's my son. He's actually grabbing a snack out of the refrigerator, but he doesn't realize we're on a blog.
Somebody's
on
on
a
a
podcast.
to close the door.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
right? It's a podcast.
Anyway, we can cut that part if you need to.
No. We got to keep it real. We got to keep the flow. So we're gonna.
Yeah. He's home from UCLA. And he's rating the refrigerator. So he goes to UCLA and he's rating the refrigerator.
Oh no, your college ghost just got
Out of the room, Jake. Yeah. Anyway, so here's the deal.
Business plan. Is it like
The business plan. So when I look at the business plan, I had my salesperson license. So part of the business plan is I've got to get my broker's license, which I achieved in a couple of years. I have a lot of different types of achievements and things that are not necessarily related to volume production. Mine is, originally I was thinking that we were going to grow our business into Asia. So it was like, let's do, 10% or 20% of our deals from Asia, which we did originally. But then the Asian market died and now it's LA, San Francisco. So it starts to change, and then it was like, okay, well, 20% of our business needs to come from our referral network, which we've been able to maintain over the years. 20 to 25% of my business comes from other agents and Sotheby's. And so that meant that I had to travel, like I set other goals. I've got to travel to 4 events a year, things like that in order to grow my business, just for example. So all of that is kind of in our plan. And then the other one is I look at market share. So our market in La Jolla is at a $1.5 billion market. And there are about 700 sales in our market a year. So that's 1,500 sides.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, it's 1.5 billion, but it's really 3 billion when you look at commissions. You know what I mean? Because there's commission.
Yeah.
So I look at percentage of the market that I want to get. How am I going to get? I'd like to have 10% of the La Jolla market. So I'm at about, I'm not too far off from that. I'm about 7 or 8%. But so I set those types of goals. And then I also set goals with my agents. And, some of it was, live and learn when I made it, because I've actually gotten rid of my entire team twice. Because the team is, for me, is about culture.
Yeah.
I want people, our mission is to help people. Our mission is not to make money.
Yes.
Our mission is helping people.
Money comes when you're helping people.
Yeah. When people call me, everyone on my team answers the phone. Hi, this is Brett Dickinson. How can I help?
I love it.
How can I help? And so what we're trying to do is help people through this process that is not easy. It's challenging. It's stressful. You're home. I used to work with the children. So that was their most valuable possession, were their children. The second most valuable is their home and their money. So now I'm working with all the people in the sale of their home, but I'm just doing the same thing. I'm just helping them through a process that they're all going to be doing. And I'm trying to get them the best deal.
Yeah.
And I think that's why you and I like each other so much, is that I think we're really just trying to help people. And do we deserve to get paid? Yeah, we deserve to get paid for what we do. And we're not paid because of how hard we work. We're paid very often for our ability to put a deal together.
Well, not only that, to that point, do I deserve to get paid? Well, absolutely, because the world deserves to get paid, because when we get
Everyone
paid,
does.
we get to put more great things out to the world to make more great. There's a domino effect. So we absolutely owe it to the world to get paid.
Right. Well, and then the other thing is, when going through COVID, we were running community service ads, and we were saying, look, real estate in California was determined to be an essential service. And the reason it's an essential service is every transaction, I put 15 people to work.
Yeah.
You're employing people when you do this business, and all of the risk we take in our marketing, in our time, in our effort, the people that work, they're not taking that same type of risk that we're taking. They work either hourly or they get paid by our doing deals. When you escrow, title, termite, contractors, handyman. I mean, I could just go on of all the people we put to work, and people were appreciative of it. They understood it. They got it.
Oh, absolutely. It
was so that's the way we look at the business also.
I'm just so glad. For the first time, I was like, being a real estate agent feels like having a stable job during COVID. I was like, this is better than the job that pays you consistently, because those aren't anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, nuts. All right. So give us when I was saying I'm listing, there's two things I hear in there. I think everybody's going to want to hear more about it. One was about your 10-year plan. The other one you talked about when you broke into the business, your listing presentation. Give us just a taste of big picture. What is it? What makes it special? What makes your listing present? Because a lot of people are like, listing presentation, I just know my market and go chat. You've got something there. What is that? What is it?
Sure. So what I also decided, which is interesting. So when I played professional tennis, there were really about 6 styles of players you had to beat. So you had the baseliner, you had the guy with the baseliner with a really big forehand, he can hit a winner. You had the serve and volleyer. You had the guy that just tried to broke your game up by hitting you lots of spins and this and that. So really what I would do is I would train, and I would go play with all the different styled players, and then I would work with my coach on the shots I couldn't handle. And so when I present a listing, I have 5 or 6 different listing presentations, depending on what the house is. So if I have a house that's, let's say, a historic property, then you have, I have a lot of the Sotheby's stuff, because you also have to compete with the other agents. You have to know what you're up against.
Right.
About Sotheby's is we're in a brand of our own. I mean, you know this as well as I do. We are our own world. We're like an Hermes or a Louis Vuitton or, Gucci. We are a luxury brand, which really sets us apart. So I talk about the auction, I talk about all of that thing in the beginning of the presentation so that people understand our power.
Mm-hmm.
The reason that we pay a franchise fee for this right. I mean, that's our, we don't have to pay a franchise fee. I had my own brokerage before I joined Sotheby's for a couple of years, but there was no way I could compete, with the other brokerage. So you have that whole section. Then I talk about, for a while there, I was doing a lot of paper, and paper was really big in our area.
Mm-hmm.
It's big in our area. People pick up, the La Jolla Light. People read local papers more than they read San Diego papers.
Oh,
So
wow. Okay.
San Diego Union Tribune has a huge readership, but when you're trying to go after a micro market, you have to go after the little newspaper in the area, which is the La Jolla Light. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So I strategically started advertising in there. So I show that in my listing presentation. Then the other thing, the really big change that happened in March was I moved everything. I had already started social media and Facebook and those campaigns. And people have to understand that everybody is buying online. And I then went into this whole section on not the video itself. A lot of people do videos, but it doesn't matter to do a cool video if no one's looking at it. So I have this whole section in my listing presentation on the exposure the video gets. So we had 5 videos last year that got over 50,000 hits.
Okay, how did you do that?
Well, so I believe in specialists. I hired a social media company that we do the videos. We work together on them with Jen, of course, and then they push them out. And they have a way of pushing them out to get the hits, to get the interest. We had a video we did at 5850.
Do you do it through YouTube, or where do you do it?
So those are YouTube videos. We do them with the Sotheby's International Realty website, the YouTube site, which has 250,000 followers.
That's a great thing. Sotheby's is a great platform, which is going to get you out to your big audience. And then as a local agent, you know how to capture, and make relevance in your local audience. And by the way, the buyer for the property.
Yes. And one more thing, let me just tell you
please.
Really interesting. So I partnered with the Altman brothers from $1 Million Listing on a deal this year.
Okay.
And it was a local deal, but I ended up doing the deal, and we did some Instagram and this and that. And we had a property in La Jolla that Alicia Keys bought. It's called the Razor House.
Okay.
And Altman's brokered the deal.
Okay.
And Swiss Beats, is married to her, and they bought it. Well, on $1 Million Listing this year, they were featuring the Razor House. Mm-hmm. So I had this property in this picture that I wanted to get featured, and they couldn't fit it in their program, and they weren't on the listing. So I ran commercials. So we did 3
Oh, how smart.
During the episode for Alicia Keys, and we did them in San Diego, LA, and we targeted all these areas. I have a client that buys media placement, and I'm like, is this going to work? And I can't tell you, our website tripled the number of hits from those commercials.
And you didn't have to risk being on $1 Million Real Estate Agent either.
Right.
You just got the exposure of it, which is even better.
Yeah. So we ran commercials. It was expensive, but the return was fantastic.
Wow. Okay. Well, one more question, and then the final 3, because we've already been going for almost an hour. Which I would go for 2 hours if we could. One more question is, so I just love, we kind of laughed about this before. Now that we've been talking for an hour, it's kind of obvious why you're so successful. And knowing the tennis game, I'm just going to add, in tennis, when things go bad, is the worst tennis. I'm among the worst in the world. You're among the best in the world. As a bad tennis player, I do know that it's not really good when you get shaken and can't stay focused and think keep your head on straight.
Sure.
So I just want to we didn't talk about that much, but here's the question. To you, it's kind of cliche, the tennis pro turns realtor. over and over and over and over and over. But for you, it really worked out well. Anything to say about that?
Well, so I'll tell you, I have quite a few friends, and I thought that being a tennis professional player real estate would be perfect. The problem for a lot of individual or professional athletes is they can't get over themselves. And so what happens is they end up not being able to go into the next profession and forget their previous profession. First went into real estate, I didn't really promote the tennis thing. I put on suits, I stopped wearing shorts, I tried to change my whole style. And when one of the things on my team, when things are really crazy, I get very calm. And they're like, what's wrong with you? I go, well, look, you just got to always step back in these moments. And you got to reflect. And one thing about real estate is there's no performance element. And that's
there's
no performance element.
No performance element.
Yeah, think about that. So when you're, a professional football player or golfer, or you have to not only think about what to do, you have to now go out and execute an act. Like run over and hit a forehand, or I've got to run over and hit a golf shot or throw a football. In real estate, if I put the deal together, I only have to have somebody sign a piece of paper.
Well,
it's actually a lot easier.
But think about, this is the performance element.
Yeah.
I'd love to have a debate on this one too.
This would be a great discussion.
Here's the performance element. It's the assessment of the market. It's a lot of our performance element is in a quote negotiation, whether it's winning business. When that moment hits where somebody's about to make a decision, first of all, you better get there and they've already made the decision. But when you're in a negotiation or when you're in a showing, especially in the market right now, the performance element is how you handle what's happening in the moment, because it can literally send a deal or whatever, one of two ways. I would say that's the performance element.
All right, so fair enough. So let's take that.
You're good ways with people.
Yeah, but let's take that a step further. Let's say that you're in that performance moment and there's 10,000 people watching you negotiate that deal, and you can't hit your serve over the net because you're so nervous you can't play, you can't speak, and you're so what do you think? You're just going to be like, you're going to crumble. And that's what people don't understand about how hard it is. Athletes, it's very difficult. When you're out there in that moment. I've had it happen to me. I was on center court one time playing in a tournament and I couldn't get my serve in, and I'm getting booed by the crowd.
Oh God.
1,000 people, and I'm nervous because it's such a big match and I'm just struggling that day and for whatever reason. And nobody cares. So you have that element. So when you're sitting with a client and you're at a table,
not 10,000 people watching.
Yeah, and you're not under the microscope, and it's
feel like you are.
But it's a little bit like what's happening with social media right now, where everything you're doing is recorded and online, and normally you were a lot freer, in that regard, because you weren't so concerned about all the eyeballs. And to answer your question, because having been through those extraordinarily stressful moments, if even when I'm stressed in a situation, I feel calmer in that moment.
Well, and it's really valuable, because when we react and get excitable, and I always quote Chris Voss, but I think it was a Harvard study, there's studies that say your IQ, which I would beg, this is conservative, is 30% lower. I bet it's more than that when you're angry or when you're
I think there's no question about that. Or when you're emotional about the thing, or when you're not thinking clearly at that moment.
The ability to do that.
Yeah, and I think you're trained, people that are under tremendous stress, you're trained for that. And then the other thing in tennis, which is interesting, like golf, you call your whole junior career, you call your own lines. So if I'm playing you in a tournament and you're 16 years of age and I have match point and I hit the ball on the line on your side of the court, you have to call it good or you're cheating. You have to call it on yourself. So, individual sports like golf and tennis, that's why I love the kids to play those.
Yeah.
To be under the most stressful moment, make the most highly integrity decision, honest decision against yourself. When you're playing golf and your ball is on just slightly OB and you don't call that against yourself, you've cheated. So,
Great lesson, because it's really
deal. How often
you and them anyway?
What?
It's not like everything in life. It's all starts here with yourself. Anyway, but keep going.
I agree with you, but
yeah,
it's very different when you're everything starts here. But when and this is why I got rid of my previous team members, and I'm not going to name any names, but every time a commission came in, all of a sudden you have like a $50,000 commission or whatever, 20,000 or whatever the number is. They renegotiated the deal because their thinking changes when the money's on the table, when on the line. And yesterday I had a deal where one of the thermostats wasn't working on one of the deals, and I'm like, you don't have to close if you're not happy.
Exactly.
$3 million, $2.5-3 million deal, and I've worked on the sale of that property for 2 years. You know what I mean? And you just you want to say, just do the deal and be quiet, but
you're so right.
Yeah. And so that moment is what you're paying your real estate agent for. That's our value.
Exactly. And that's the paradox of it all. Like what we said, you've got to have it with yourself to be able to have it for other people. You can't have it for other people, that honesty and integrity. You can't have it for other people when you don't have it with yourself. Exactly.
And so that's the big thing, I think, that you learn from playing sports is you learn arbitration. You're your own arbitrator, your own person. And so that's how I sleep at night. Yeah. I'm doing right by the people.
That's how you sleep at night? But
yeah, because I know I'm doing the right thing and I'm doing it right by the people, and I can look at myself in the mirror.
To your point though, as naive as it may sound, it continuously proves itself true in my life. The more that's just how you are and what you do, the more I'm like, whoa, why doesn't everybody just do the right thing? Because literally the way it pays off and propels your career, especially as you get older and you feel the compound effect of it, you're like, this is amazing. Like, it's so easy. Just
it is
do right by people. But you have to have faith in the beginning and know that.
Right.
To get to see.
And then you end up surrounding yourself, which is, why you and I are friends, is that you surround yourself with those people, because you don't really want to deal, with the people that aren't functioning that way. Now, the other thing you have is in real estate and in business, you have people that aren't like that. So what I tell my team is I said, look, everyone's got a game on how they play. There's some people that are, always going to shave the edge. There's some people that are always going to push the limit, but you don't have to. And if you're smarter than they are, and you can figure them out, you can get ahead of it, and they can't take advantage of you. Well,
it usually people that are that way, when they're that way, they'll flip themselves on their own heads.
Yeah, but you're stuck in real estate doing deals with whoever is buying and selling. So you just have to sometimes deal with it, and you have to work your way through it. But you just got to be.
The better you get at it, the more of an advantage it is. What people do to manipulate becomes a disadvantage to themselves. The better you are.
Yes, at times it does.
Right. Not always, but it really does a lot.
Yeah.
Final three.
Okay.
Because you're such good stuff. Like, anything else to add? And then we're going to do the final three questions.
No, I mean, I just think that you're the way you're doing this is just fabulous. I've been on some of these before, and it's such a lovely conversation. You know what I mean? It's just so nice to talk about openly about what we're doing and our business, and it's just really pleasant. You know what I mean? Doing this, interacting with you, and talking about all this stuff. I just feel like we're just catching up.
We're good. That's what it is. We just let people listen in. That's all. Sure. That's really what it is. And the point, everybody, our regular listeners know, the point is that there's so much out there about like how to catch the deal and, how to make money doing nothing. And that's not what this industry is, especially this show. We've got the top producers in the world selling the most expensive properties in the world. And over and over that reveals itself. Final three.
All right.
Thank you. Number one, what has been your greatest, well, you kind of told us, but how would you sum up your greatest resource in your success?
I would say there's two things that have been the greatest attributes. So number one would be perseverance. I would say that if I look at like, I had a lot of setbacks over the years. I was just talking about my coach, my professional tennis coach, and, we lost certain matches, but we never gave up on our dream. We never gave up. My first year on tour, I think I won 9 matches in 35 weeks. And I went home and I talked about this, and it was hard. And I wasn't in college, and I'm like, what the hell am I doing? And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get back out there and I'm going to make this work. And I did every single thing he said. And within a year and a half, I was 250 in the world. So I think that like you get a lot of setbacks in life. And one of the biggest things that I look for is I call it grit. People that have grit.
That's some grit. You sure have that in California?
By the way, I love grits. My mom used to make me grits in the morning, and I love it.
Exactly. She's
talking about like true grit. Yeah, and the fact that you can dig deep.
Yeah.
Some of my agents, I've seen them go through some really tough times. I had one agent this year that closed a $7 million deal, and she had a very challenging client, and she was crying at certain times on how she was being treated. And I'm like, look, hang in the pocket. Just hang in the pocket. You're going to get through it. It's going to be fine. And she sold the deal. And when she got the listing and got it done, she sold it in 2 weeks. It was a $7 million deal. It's the biggest deal she's ever done. So my point is, I think that. And the other big thing is my ability to step back and reflect in a very overall way, including of myself. Because I think that we get caught in it because we're so busy and we're so trying to do it. But you got to be able to step back and think, what could we do differently? Mm-hmm. What could I do differently? And how can I change? Because when I was first in the real estate business, I was trying to right every wrong, and I was, I had certain approaches, and I couldn't get over the client criticism. I couldn't sleep at night.
Yeah, I remember that.
Business. I couldn't take the criticism, even though I had coaches that rode me pretty hard. I played football and basketball and baseball and then tennis.
Get into that, right? Overachiever.
Yeah, thank you. But I couldn't handle a client thinking that I was actually trying to take advantage of them.
I used to be the same way.
It really affected my integrity, and it made me like, why would he think that I would ever do? I would never, and I just couldn't do it. And so when I started to understand and reflect on how important that character issue was with me, mm-hmm. and also to understand that that's just the way some people do business.
Yeah.
It's like when you play a match and a guy is always arguing with the umpire. Mm-hmm. There's people that's the way they compete. And when I started to understand the mentality of the different people in my business, that I was doing business with.
Yeah.
And my own characteristics.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't dare, cheat somebody in a match, or I wouldn't, or.
And it's heart-wrenching, right?
Yeah, I just couldn't do it, So when somebody accused me of it, I'm like, how could you ever, and I couldn't.
You think, because we think everybody's like us. We think
they
think that they're thinking the way we would think it. That's not it.
Right. But again, I didn't give up.
Yeah.
On it. I kept reading books about it. I kept talking about it. So at the end of the day, if you persevere, And perseverance can be a flaw because you can persevere in the wrong direction and you can be stubborn. That's not what I'm
And
saying.
that's not perseverance, by the way. Right.
Yeah, you've got to persevere, but reflect on what you're doing, and so that you can improve, so you can change, so you can make that little adjustment that makes a difference. So those would probably be the two biggest things.
I love what you said, and we've been talking for, but I'm not even going to say it because you've got a couple of minutes, right? I want to hit on
Sure,
something you
I'm
said.
fine. I'm fine. Yeah.
It's so relevant. We don't even talk about it enough on this show, but this business can be so tough because there are things that happen that are so outside of your control. And I mean, like a decade or more of my business, I'm not even sure how I did it without having a heart attack, because I so owned it. When the client was upset about things that were out of my control, I was like wanting to somehow like carry that for them to make it okay. And that makes it worse.
Right.
And I finally figured out, like, it is not me, how to ask questions, listen, help them carry it for themselves and get everything for themselves, and do the same thing for myself, which, not to get all cheesy, but the
That's
beginning,
very hard. It's
the
very
beginning
hard to
of it
get to
was,
that place.
but then the beginning of it for me and everybody who's been listening to this for the 3 years I've done this show, I went crazy on some Chris Voss, because that was the beginning of peace for me, was reading that book 7 times. But to you, what was it for you?
So, I'll be honest with you. There's a guy I've been reading since I was very young. His name is Krishnamurti. And I hate to use Krishnamurti. It's not a religion. It's not a following. It's the name is terrible. It's not Hare Krishna or anything like that. He
Right.
basically just talks about your thinking, self, and fear, and thought, and anxiety, and basically it's an investigation into your thinking. And in his speaking, it's a window into your behavior.
Oh,
So when you
Krishna.
read it,
So
it
you're
just
gonna
kind
have
of
to
opens
spell
your
that.
mind up. What's
But you're gonna
that?
have to spell that for us. Krishnamurti.
Yeah, KRISHNAMURTI.
So like Murti, if you're, well, that's
Murti.
horrible. I'm gonna
Murti.
edit
And
that out. But
he
anyway,
was a
Krishnamurti.
philosopher. He was a philosopher from India. He's really well known all around the world. He had schools all over the world. He's not, and I hate to use that word because I don't want people to think I'm, like in a cult or something. It's not.
You're in Atlanta. You're good, right? Well, you're not
But
in
it's
Atlanta. You're actually in San
just
Diego.
a series of books that.
Right, whatever. Right.
Now, that is to say, I also read lots of other things on the mind, on thinking, on.
Well, that leads us to our next question.
Sure.
If there is one book, and with you there could be 5, maybe we'll get it down to 3, or maybe there's one, but is there one book that you've read, like mine would be Never Split the Difference, among many, but Never Split the Difference has been life-changing.
I read that book, by the way. Never Split the Difference. Guy that was the FBI negotiator, right?
It just, for me, like, because I was in some difficult situations and applying it, and I would literally go, well, he said to do it and it can't get worse, and then I would like mirror somebody. Oh my God, like with 3 words, the conversation goes in a completely different direction. It was like magic. But to you, what is your book?
Right. So I read that book. My only complaint about that book is he was in a situation where it was kind of win or lose. I think we're in a situation where there's a lot of fallback positions in real estate. There's a lot of gingerly way of getting through it. I'm reading a book right now. So there's 2 books I would say. One is Predictably Irrational.
Yeah, we said that earlier.
Which is really about human behavior and how people think about pricing. That changed my world last year. And then I'm reading another book called Drive.
Okay.
And
Predictably Irrational and Drive.
Well, what's interesting about Drive is it talks about the carrot and the stick. And it talks about the fact that that's not really how to motivate people, how to work. And as I look at my life and my entire team, we have kind of an intrinsic interest in what we're doing. We don't do the business for just the reward. When you train somebody to do something strictly for the reward, if there's no reward, they're no longer motivated. Or
Yeah.
if they stick, they do it from fear. But ultimately, like what I try to do, and I've been fortunate enough to be able to do things I love to do my whole life.
Yeah.
I never really was that I'm not that interested in the money. Look, do I love making, the reward? Yeah, I love making the reward, winning the tournament, all of that. But it's not what drives me. What drives me is the deal. What drives me is, putting the thing together and watching it come together. Like when we sold this house, I called the guy up that we were working on it together. I go, oh my God, we did it. It worked. Oh my gosh, this whole dream, this whole vision came together. It was like 5 years we'd been working on this thing,
Yeah.
this sale. And so it's the same thing I do with my fiance has two boys, and the oldest boy is 19 and a half, and he's like, a brilliant kid. He's at UCLA, but it's very result, result, result. And I said, my goal for you now that you're in college is not to get straight A's. It's to find what you love to do. That's your goal in college. Of course, he wants to get A's. He can't help himself, and he's a performer. I said, but college in this time in your life is to find what you love to do and do that.
Yeah.
And don't worry about the money. Don't worry about the outcome and the result, and you will be happy when you do that. And that's why I love the real estate, because it was something that, like, look, my greatest passion will always be playing professional tennis. There's nothing I loved more than going on the court and fighting it out and working on my game. And I just love that. I love traveling around the world. I love meeting all the people.
Right.
I just love that. But this is like, my second or third career. And I just wake up every morning wanting to, look at properties and find deals and put it together and grow the business and help my team members and things. So it's more about trying to find that thing. And that's what this book Drive was really all about, and how you reach mastery, which is interesting.
Okay.
How do you reach mastery in whatever you're doing and how long it takes to do that.
What does this book say? Because there's other books that have said,
Yeah, I mean, this one's kind of like a 10-year,
yeah,
like a 10-year, 10,000 hours type thing. And a lot of truth to that.
Yeah. Well, to our business, at first it's like nobody will. I think within our business, we appreciate less sometimes what a skill set this really is until you've been doing it a while. And then suddenly, like, you're like, well, that was easy. It was just a conversation, or it was just a thought. It was just like telling somebody how to do it. And then when you're like, oh, but wait, that just happened. And that could have been a disaster otherwise. Wait, maybe I
Sure.
do have a skill. I mean,
Yeah,
but
the
then
very,
it's been 18 years, so maybe.
It was a very interesting story when I got into coaching. I would go to these coaching seminars, and this is a really interesting story about. There was a guy who was, he had one of those old televisions, and his television wasn't working, and so he called the television repairman, and the television repairman comes over and gets out a screwdriver and unscrews the back of the TV, and he looks at it, and he takes out a rubber mallet and he smashes, on the television, in those old televisions, and screws it back up, and he hands the guy for a bill for $800. The guy's like, $800? What are you talking about? It says $25 for a screwdriver, $25 for a hammer, and $750 for knowing where to tap.
Exactly.
5 years to know where to tap.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, what I find that where we've gotten better in interacting with agents such as yourself that are highly experienced, you do so many things right that we take for granted.
Mm-hmm.
We do so many things right that because we have a vision of what's happening, where the deal's headed, where the mistakes are going to happen, how to get ahead of it, what email to write, don't write that. There's so many little things we do every day that, when I bring on a new agent, I kind of assume they know it all, like, oh, this is so simple. It's so straightforward, but they don't. And so you realize that when you work with new agents.
Exactly.
It's a very big difference. And so it's no different than, what the most difficult thing in tennis is when to do what. I call it when to do what. When do you go down the line? When do you come into the net? When do you serve wide? When do you serve body?
The fact that you can even go down the line or serve wide.
Yeah, I mean, and it's the same thing. Say, when do I write an email? When do I make a phone call? When do I, meet with such and such inspector? What, like I have a deal I just did the other day, and I have an agent helping me, and we got into the last week, and I just said, stop everything you're doing. I've got it.
Yeah.
1 week, I don't want her messing. I'm the closer.
Yeah.
And I made everything perfect, and we closed.
Yeah.
But I busted my butt. I mean, we went there, and all of the radiant heater stopped working. I had to get the guy on the phone. Then I had to go, call the guy from back east. I had, there's just all these things that start to go wrong when you're trying to get to the finish line. And I protected my buyer and seller, and but the point is that you know that if you're in control of that deal, you're going to make it happen because you're going to figure it out. Don't you think?
10,000 hours of experience plus
Yeah.
helps.
Yeah.
And for those of us in part of this conversation listening that don't have that yet, that's like why this business is so great, because we've got brokerages where we can listen into podcasts. And I remember listening in on deals as a new agent and just thinking it's amazing if you just listen in what you've learned.
100%. And so when I first got in the business, and I was just talking to one of the guys that helped me, I would just go sit in on their negotiations.
Exactly.
Negotiating deal. And I said, can I just sit in? He said, yeah, grab a pad, like a legal pad. And I'd walk in.
And like you're taking notes.
It's on my team, and I had nothing to do with his team. And I would just hear them negotiate the deal, and I just listen to the deal. And you just learn so much listening and watching.
That's awesome. All right. Final question. What is the one thing, if we're going to forget everything else about our conversation today, what's the one thing everybody you would hope we remember?
From this conversation, I would say, I think probably the biggest thing is to improve a little bit every day. All the little things matter. Just improve a little bit, learn something, and improve every single day. If you don't know how to do a transaction, call an agent and find out, reach out. If you don't know how title works, call your title rep. We have amazing resources. And, if you're not, I have 4 friends of mine that are highly experienced real estate agents that I could call at any moment and say, hey, what do you think of this deal? How should I handle it? What do you think of this negotiation? So I find that you just don't realize how much better you're getting by learning a little bit every day. Just try to keep improving. And at the end of the day, you'll really, really make your mark, I think.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Brett, thank you. Great interview. Good to see you.
You know what we got to do? We got to do one where we get a round table of 4 or 5 agents, and we need to call it like, you can't make this shit up. And just
love it.
Craziest stories that have actually happened. We don't need to make up stuff.
No, we don't, because you can't make it up. You can't.
I would love to get like 5 agents at a round table, and you'd be perfect for it. And we get 4, and everyone's got to come and talk about their best negotiation. And they got to talk about the craziest thing that happened to them at a listing or at a showing or in a deal. Wouldn't that be fun?
That would be awesome.
Thanks for listening to the Jere Metcalf podcast, where top real estate agents tell how they do it. If you like this episode, please share it with friends. To find more episodes, search Jere Metcalf Podcast on any platform for podcasts, or go to JereMetcalfPodcast.com. That's JereMetcalf podcast.com.